Kang Hei-wan stared at the message on her screen and felt her stomach drop. The words glowed in harsh red letters across the diplomatic terminal in her office on Luna Station. Emergency Council Session. Immediate attendance required. Subject: recent aggressive actions by Terran vessels. Her hands shook slightly as she read it again, hoping she had misunderstood something. She had been Earth's ambassador to the Galactic Council for 15 years. In all that time, she had never received an emergency summons like this. The Council only called emergency sessions for the worst possible situations. Wars between member species, genocide attempts, violations of the most sacred galactic laws. And now they were calling one about humanity. Park Ji-ho rushed into her office without knocking. His face was pale and his usually perfect hair was messy. He had been her aide for 8 years, and she had never seen him this worried. He carried a datapad in his trembling hands, and his breathing was fast and shallow. "Ambassador, we have a serious problem," he said. His voice cracked slightly on the last word. 3 of our exploration ships have been destroyed in the Outer Rim sectors. The Bright Dawn, the New Horizon, and the Starwalker, all gone, no survivors found, almost no debris left behind. Hei-wan stood up so quickly her chair fell backward. The sound echoed in the small office like a gunshot. "What do you mean destroyed? Who attacked them? Pirates? Some new hostile species?" Ji-ho shook his head rapidly. "That's just it. Nobody knows. The ships just disappeared. One day they were sending normal reports about mineral surveys and mapping new star systems. The next day, nothing. Complete silence. When Council search teams reached their last known positions, they found only tiny pieces of metal floating in space." She walked to the large window that looked out at Earth hanging in the black sky. The blue and white planet looked so peaceful from here. It was hard to believe that somewhere out in the galaxy, human ships were being destroyed and humans were dying. She pressed her palm against the cold glass and tried to think clearly. "How long ago did this happen?" she asked. "The attacks happened over the past 2 weeks, but the Council only just informed us now. They've been investigating on their own this whole time." Ji-ho's voice was bitter. "They didn't even tell us our own people were dead." Hei-wan felt anger building in her chest. The Council was supposed to inform member species immediately when their citizens were harmed. It was one of the most basic rules of galactic law. The fact that they had waited weeks to tell humanity meant something was very wrong. "Get me a connection to Admiral Lee on Earth. I need to know the exact status of every human ship in space. Also contact Captain Kim at Intelligence. I want to know everything about these destroyed ships and their missions." Ji-ho nodded and hurried out of the office. Hei-wan remained at the window, watching Earth slowly rotate below. She had worked so hard to build good relationships between humanity and the other species. Humans were still the newest members of the Council. They had only joined 20 years ago after proving they were not a threat to galactic peace. Before that, many alien species had been afraid of humans. They had studied Earth's history and seen the wars, the violence, the way humans fought each other for thousands of years. Some council members had argued that humanity was too aggressive and dangerous to join their peaceful civilization, but Hei-wan and others had worked to change that opinion. They had shown that humans could be peaceful. They had shared their technology freely. They had helped other species with scientific research and medical advances. They had never started conflicts with anyone. Slowly, carefully, humanity had earned respect and trust. Now all of that work might be destroyed. If the Council believed humans were attacking ships in space, everything would change. They might expel humanity from the Council. They might even declare war. The communication system chimed, and Admiral Lee's face appeared on the screen. He was a stern man with gray hair and deep lines around his eyes from years of commanding spaceships. Behind him, Hei-wan could see the busy command center of Earth's defense headquarters. "Ambassador," he said formally, "I assume you're calling about the emergency session notice." "Admiral, I need to know about our ships. Ji-ho tells me 3 exploration vessels were destroyed, but the Council is calling this about aggressive actions by human ships. That doesn't make sense." Lee's expression darkened. "It doesn't make sense because it's not true. I have the location and status of every human vessel in space. All of them are accounted for. All of them have been conducting peaceful scientific missions. None of them have been anywhere near the sectors where these attacks supposedly happened. Supposedly? HFY leaned forward. You don't think the attacks really occurred? Oh, the attacks happened. But they weren't carried out by real human ships. Someone is using vessels that look like ours, sound like ours, and fight like ours, but they're not ours. Lee's voice was hard and angry. Someone is framing humanity, Ambassador, and they're doing a very good job of it. The screen split and Captain Kim So-young appeared beside the Admiral. She was younger than both of them, with sharp eyes and short black hair. She ran Earth's intelligence operations and knew more about alien politics than almost anyone. Ambassador, Kim said quickly, I've been analyzing the preliminary reports. The evidence against us is very strong. The attacking ships used human weapon signatures. They broadcast messages in perfect Terran standard. They even used tactical patterns that match our military doctrine. But you just said all our ships are accounted for, HFY said. They are, which means someone else has built ships that are identical to ours in every way that matters, ships that can fool even council sensors and recording equipment. HFY felt a chill run down her spine. This was worse than she had thought. It wasn't just a case of mistaken identity or confused reports. Someone had deliberately created fake human ships and used them to attack innocent targets. Someone wanted the galaxy to believe that humanity had turned violent and aggressive. Who would do this? She asked. And why? Kim and Lee exchanged glances. We don't know yet, Kim said. But whoever they are, they know us very well. They understand our technology, our language, our military tactics. This isn't the work of pirates or random criminals. This is a major operation by someone with serious resources and planning. The communication system chimed again, and Jiho's voice came through the speakers. Ambassador, your transport to Nexus Prime is ready. The council session begins in 18 hours. The journey will take 16 hours at maximum speed. HFY looked at the two officers on her screen. I have to go face the council and convince them that humanity is innocent. But I don't have any proof. All I have is my word that we didn't do this. We'll keep investigating from here, Lee promised. If there's evidence to find, we'll find it. And Ambassador, Kim added, be very careful on Nexus Prime. If someone is powerful enough to frame an entire species for war crimes, they won't hesitate to eliminate one diplomat who gets too close to the truth. The screens went dark, and HFY was alone again. She looked out at Earth one more time, wondering if this might be the last time she saw her homeworld as humanity's representative to the galaxy. In a few hours, she would be standing before the most powerful beings in the universe, trying to prove that her species was innocent of crimes they clearly appeared to have committed. She gathered her diplomatic credentials and prepared to fight for humanity's future. The journey to Nexus Prime felt like the longest 16 hours of HFY's life. She sat in the diplomatic transport ship, staring at files and reports, trying to find something that would help humanity's case. The evidence against them was overwhelming and perfectly crafted. Every piece of data pointed to human guilt. Jiho worked at the console across from her, his fingers moving rapidly over the controls as he analyzed attack patterns and weapon signatures. His face grew more worried with each passing hour. Sometimes he would look up at her with questions in his eyes, but neither of them spoke much during the journey. Captain Kim had sent additional intelligence reports during their flight. The destroyed ships had been completely obliterated. The attacking vessels had used advanced plasma weapons that matched human military specifications exactly. Communication intercepts showed the attackers speaking Terran standard with perfect Earth accents. Even their ship registration codes appeared to be authentic human fleet identifiers. This is impossible, Jiho finally said, breaking the long silence. These aren't just similar to our ships. According to the sensor data, they are our ships. Same hull designs, same engine signatures, same communication protocols. How can that be when all our real ships are accounted for? HFY rubbed her tired eyes. Someone has either stolen our ship designs or they've built perfect copies from stolen technical specifications. Either way, this represents a massive intelligence breach that we knew nothing about. The transport ship's pilot announced their approach to Nexus Prime. Through the viewport, HFY saw the massive council chambers growing larger ahead of them. The station was enormous, easily the size of Earth's moon, with thousands of docking bays and residential sections for representatives from across the galaxy. She had visited Nexus Prime many times over the years, but it still impressed her. The station housed delegates from 847 different species, each with their own environmental needs and cultural requirements. Some areas were filled with water for aquatic species. Others had low gravity for beings from small worlds. Some sections glowed with radiation that was deadly to humans, but necessary for crystalline life forms. As their ship approached the diplomatic docking bay, HFY saw other vessels arriving. The sleek ships of the Velthon crystal entities. The massive bioships grown by the Meraki gas dwellers. The geometric craft of the Zentari hive minds. All of them coming to judge humanity. The docking process was unusually tense. Normally, human diplomatic ships were welcomed with standard courtesy. This time, security scanners examined their vessel for much longer than usual. Armed guard ships escorted them to their assigned bay. The message was clear. Humanity was no longer trusted. Inside the station, things were even worse. Other diplomatic delegations that had always been friendly now avoided eye contact with HFY and her team. Conversations stopped when they walked past. Some species actually moved away from them in the corridors. "They're all afraid of us," Jiho whispered as they made their way to the human diplomatic quarters. "They think we've become violent." Their quarters were in the newest section of the station, where junior species were housed. Humanity had been placed there when they first joined the council, and had never been moved to the more prestigious areas despite their growing importance. Now HFY wondered if they would ever get that chance. She immediately contacted Earth for updates. Admiral Lee appeared on the communication screen, his expression grim. Behind him, she could see increased activity in the command center. More officers than usual were monitoring screens and analyzing data. "Ambassador, we've made some progress," Lee said. "Dr. Choi at the Xenological Research Center has been studying the attack data. He's found something interesting." The screen split, and Dr. Choi Minho appeared. He was a thin man with wire-rimmed glasses who had spent his entire career studying alien technologies. His laboratory was filled with samples and equipment from dozens of different species. "Ambassador," Choi said excitedly, "the weapons signatures from these attacks are definitely human in design, but they're too advanced. The plasma-focusing techniques and power distribution patterns are at least 50 years ahead of our current technology. We couldn't build weapons like these even if we wanted to." HFY felt a spark of hope. "So you're saying the weapons are more advanced than anything we actually have?" "Exactly. But here's the strange part. The fundamental design principles are definitely ours. Whoever built these weapons started with human technology and then improved it far beyond what we've achieved. It's as if someone took our weapons research and continued developing it for decades." "That's impossible," Jiho said. "Human weapons research is classified at the highest levels. Only a few people on Earth even know the basic principles." Admiral Lee nodded grimly. "Which means we have a security problem much bigger than we thought. Either someone has been stealing our most secret research for years, or someone has been developing human-style weapons independently and doing a better job than we are." Captain Kim's voice came through the speakers. "Ambassador, I've been analyzing the attack patterns and communication protocols. The timing is very suspicious. All 3 attacks happened just before major council votes on defense spending and military cooperation agreements. Someone wanted to make humanity look aggressive right when the council was deciding how to handle military matters." HFY felt pieces of a puzzle starting to come together in her mind. Someone with access to advanced weapons technology, detailed knowledge of human systems, and perfect timing for maximum political impact. This isn't random. This is a carefully planned operation. "But who?" Lee asked. "Which species has both the technology and the motivation to frame humanity like this?" Before anyone could answer, alarms began sounding throughout the human quarters. Emergency lights flashed red, and an automated voice announced in multiple languages that all diplomatic delegations should report to the main council chambers immediately. "The session is starting early," HFY said. "I have to go." She ended the communication and hurried through the station corridors with Jiho and her security team. Other delegations were also moving toward the chambers, their various forms of movement creating a strange parade through the curved hallways. The council chambers were vast beyond imagination. The ceiling disappeared into darkness high above, and thousands of seats were arranged in complex patterns to accommodate different species' needs. Some delegates floated in zero-gravity fields. Others were submerged in environmental tanks filled with their native atmospheres. HFY took her seat in the human section, which was located in the area designated for newer council members. She looked around at the assembled representatives and felt very small and alone. These beings represented civilizations that were thousands of years older than humanity. Some had been traveling between stars when humans were still living in caves. At the center of the chamber, Chancellor Vex Prima rose to address the assembly. She was a towering insectoid being with 4 arms and compound eyes that seemed to see everything at once. Her chitinous exoskeleton gleamed under the chamber. Lights, and her voice carried easily to every corner of the vast space. "Delegates of the Galactic Council," Vex Prima began, "we are gathered to address serious charges against one of our member species. Evidence has been presented that suggests human vessels have conducted unprovoked attacks against peaceful colonies in neutral space." A massive holographic display appeared above the chamber, showing recordings of the attacks. HFY watched in horror as ships that looked exactly like human exploration vessels opened fire on defenseless settlements. The recordings showed perfect detail. Human hull markings, human weapons signatures, even human voices giving attack orders. "The evidence is clear," continued a delegate from the Zentari Collective. "Human aggression has finally shown its true nature. We warned the Council 20 years ago that this species was too violent to join our peaceful civilization." Another voice spoke from the aquatic section. "The Meraki delegation demands immediate action. These attacks violate every principle of galactic law." HFY stood up, her heart pounding. "Honorable Chancellor, I must respectfully request permission to respond to these charges." The chamber fell silent. Thousands of alien eyes turned toward her. She felt the weight of their attention like a physical pressure pressing down on her shoulders. "The floor recognizes the human representative," Vex Prima announced. HFY took a deep breath and began to speak, knowing that her next words might determine the future of her entire species. HFY stood in the center of the vast council chamber, feeling the weight of thousands of alien gazes upon her. The silence was complete and heavy, broken only by the quiet hum of environmental systems keeping various species alive in their different atmospheric requirements. "Honorable delegates," she began, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's advanced acoustics. "I stand before you today to state with absolute certainty that no human vessels conducted these attacks. Every ship in our fleet is accounted for, and none have been in the sectors where these incidents occurred." A ripple of skeptical sounds moved through the assembly. Clicks, whistles, and electronic tones that translated as disbelief in dozens of different languages. Chancellor Vex Prima gestured with one of her 4 arms. "Ambassador Kang, the evidence against your species is overwhelming. Are you suggesting that our sensors and recording equipment are somehow mistaken?" "No, Chancellor. I'm suggesting that someone has deliberately created false evidence to frame humanity for crimes we did not commit." HFY activated her personal datapad and displayed her findings on the chamber's holographic system. "Our analysis shows that while these weapons appear to be human-designed, they are actually 50 years more advanced than anything we currently possess." High Arbiter Quindos of the Velthans rose from his crystalline platform. His body was composed of living mineral formations that glowed with internal light. When he spoke, his voice resonated like distant music. "You claim innocence based on technological analysis. Perhaps your species simply developed these weapons in secret. With respect, Arbiter, that would be impossible. The development of such advanced weapons would require resources and facilities that simply don't exist on Earth or our colonies. We would need decades of research and testing that could not be hidden from our own military leadership." Fleet Commander Zeph 9 of the Meraki delegation floated in his water-filled environmental tank. His gas-filled body pulsed with different colors as he communicated through bioluminescent patterns that were translated by the chamber's systems. "The human claims are irrelevant. The attacks happened. Human ships were recorded conducting them. The evidence speaks for itself." HFY felt frustration building inside her chest. These delegates had already made up their minds. They wanted to believe humanity was guilty because it fit their preconceptions about human nature. She needed something more convincing than technical analysis. Chancellor, I formally request a full 72-hour investigation period before any final judgment is made. Humanity deserves the right to examine this evidence thoroughly and present a complete defense. The chamber erupted in discussion. Some delegates supported the request while others argued that the evidence was already sufficient for judgment. After several minutes of debate, Chancellor Vex Prima called for order. The request is granted. The human delegation has 72 standard hours to present additional evidence. This session is suspended until that time. As the various delegations began to disperse, Haiwan noticed something troubling. Several of the most vocal accusers, including Quindos and Zeph-9, gathered together in a corner of the chamber for what appeared to be a private conversation. Their body language suggested coordination and planning that went beyond the normal diplomatic discussions. Back in the human quarters, Haiwan immediately contacted Earth. This time, Captain Kim appeared on screen along with Admiral Lee and Dr. Choi. Behind them, she could see additional personnel working frantically at computer terminals. Ambassador, Kim said without preamble, we've made a breakthrough. Dr. Choi discovered something in the attack data that the Council investigators missed. Choi leaned forward excitedly. The communication protocols used by the attacking ships include data packet structures that don't exist in any human system. These packets are embedded so deeply in the transmission codes that they're almost invisible, but they're definitely there. What do these packets contain? Haiwan asked. That's where it gets interesting, Kim replied. We trace the packet structure through our xenological databases. The design principles match technology from the hegemony of Keth. Haiwan felt her blood turn cold. The Keth were destroyed 200 years ago. The Council fleet eliminated their entire civilization after they attempted to conquer half the galaxy. That's what everyone believes, Lee said grimly. But what if some of them survived? What if they've been hiding in dark space all this time, planning their revenge? Dr. Choi brought up historical records on his screen. The Keth were incredibly advanced technologically. They were also masters of infiltration and deception. If anyone could fake human ships convincingly enough to fool Council sensors, it would be them. But how would they get human technology? Ji-Ho asked. Our security protocols should prevent that kind of intelligence breach. Kim's expression darkened. That's what worries me most. For the Keth to create such perfect copies of our ships, they would need detailed technical specifications, communication codes, and tactical doctrine. That level of information could only come from someone with very high clearance in our military or government. The implications hit Haiwan like a physical blow. You're saying we have a traitor. Someone has been feeding information to a hostile alien species that's supposed to be extinct. It's the only explanation that makes sense, Lee confirmed. The Keth couldn't have done this alone. They need human cooperation. As they were discussing this revelation, alarms began sounding again throughout the station. But these weren't the gentle chimes that called delegates to session. These were emergency klaxons that indicated immediate danger. Haiwan rushed to the viewport in her quarters and looked out at the space around Nexus Prime. What she saw made her heart stop. Ships were decloaking all around the station. Dozens of them appearing out of nowhere as their stealth systems deactivated. The ships were sleek and angular, with hull designs that hurt to look at directly. They were painted in colors that seemed to shift and change, making it difficult for the eye to focus on them properly. Even after 200 years, Haiwan recognized them from historical records. Keth warships. They're here, she whispered. The Keth are here. The station's defense systems immediately activated, but the Keth ships made no aggressive moves. Instead, they simply surrounded Nexus Prime in a perfect formation, close enough to strike, but not yet attacking. It was a demonstration of power and a clear message. They could destroy the Council's capital whenever they chose. Emergency broadcasts filled the communication channels. Station security was ordering all ships to remain docked. Council guards were moving to defensive positions throughout the station. Diplomatic quarters were being sealed for protection. But what worried Haiwan most was the timing. The Keth had revealed themselves just as humanity was being accused of aggression. This couldn't be a coincidence. It was all part of a larger plan. Her communication system activated, and Captain Kim's voice filled the room, tense with urgency. "Ambassador, we've intercepted Keth transmissions. They're not here to attack the station. They're here to negotiate." Negotiate? What? They want to address the Council. They're claiming that humanity has been conducting unprovoked attacks on their hidden settlements, and they demand justice under galactic law. HFY closed her eyes and felt the last pieces of the puzzle fall into place. The Keth hadn't just framed humanity for random attacks. They had attacked their own people using fake human ships so they could appear before the Council as victims seeking justice. "It's brilliant," she said quietly. "They make humanity look like aggressors, then reveal themselves as the innocent, victims. The Council will have to choose between believing us or believing them, and they have physical evidence while we only have theories." Jiho looked at her with wide eyes. "What do we do now?" Before HFY could answer, her personal communication device chimed with an incoming message. The sender was listed as anonymous, but when she opened it, her blood ran cold. The message was brief and written in perfect Terran standard. "Stop. Investigating or humanity dies. You have seen our ships. You know what we can do. Accept exile from the Council and your species will be allowed to survive in isolation. Continue fighting these charges, and Earth will burn. You have 1 hour to decide." HFY stared at the message for a long moment, then deleted it. She looked out at the Keth ships surrounding the station and made her choice. "Jiho, get me a secure connection to Admiral Lee. Tell him to bring the entire Terran fleet to Nexus Prime immediately." "Ambassador, that could be seen as an act of war." "The Keth are already planning war," she replied. "They've been planning it for 200 years. The only question now is whether humanity will face it alone or with allies." She turned away from the viewport and began preparing for the most important speech of her life. In a few hours, she would stand before the Council again. But this time, she wouldn't just be defending humanity's innocence, she would be warning the galaxy about an enemy that had spent centuries planning their destruction. The Keth wanted the Council to choose between humanity and them. HFY was going to make sure the Council understood exactly what that choice really meant. The Emergency Council session was unlike anything in galactic history. The chamber was filled with tension so thick it seemed to have physical weight. Outside the massive station, Keth warships maintained their perfect formation, a constant reminder of the threat surrounding them all. HFY sat in the human section, but she was no longer alone. Admiral Lee had arrived with a full diplomatic escort, including General Nam Tae-jin, the commander of humanity's special forces, and Colonel Oh Hyun-woo, head of Earth's intelligence service. Their presence sent a clear message. Humanity was not backing down. At the center of the chamber, a new figure had appeared. Warlord Keth Vash stood on a platform that had been hastily constructed for the Keth delegation. He was tall and angular, with pale skin that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. His eyes were completely black, and when he spoke, his voice carried harmonics that made many delegates visibly uncomfortable. "Honored members of the Galactic Council," Keth Vash began, "I come before you as the representative of the survivors of the Keth hegemony. For 2 centuries, my people have lived in exile, hidden in the dark spaces between stars, slowly rebuilding our civilization after the unprovoked destruction of our worlds." Murmurs rippled through the assembly. Many delegates had believed the Keth were completely extinct. The revelation that they had survived and rebuilt came as a shock to species that had celebrated their destruction centuries ago. "We had hoped to remain hidden until we could make peaceful contact with the Council," Keth Vash continued. "But recent events have forced us to reveal ourselves. The human species has discovered our hidden settlements and has begun systematic attacks upon our people." The holographic display above the chamber activated, showing recordings of the same attacks that had been used to accuse humanity. But now, they were presented from a different perspective, showing human ships attacking what appeared to be peaceful Keth colonies. "These unprovoked assaults have killed thousands of my people," the warlord said, his voice carrying what sounded like genuine grief. "We seek justice under galactic law and protection from further human aggression." Chancellor Vex Prima looked between the Keth delegation and the humans. Her compound eyes reflected the chamber lights in complex patterns. "This is a most serious accusation. Ambassador Kang, How does humanity respond to these charges? HFY stood slowly. She had spent hours preparing for this moment, analyzing every piece of evidence and planning every word she would speak. The future of humanity, and possibly the entire galaxy, depended on what happened in the next few minutes. Chancellor, Honorable Delegates, what you are witnessing is the most elaborate deception in galactic history. The Keth have not been innocent victims hiding in exile. They have been preparing for war, building their forces, and planning the conquest of every free species in the galaxy. Kethvash made a sound that might have been laughter. The humans offer conspiracy theories because they cannot deny the evidence of their crimes. Their violent nature has finally shown itself, as we predicted it would centuries ago. The violent nature Warlord Kethvash speaks of, HFY replied, belongs to his own species, not mine. Colonel O, please share your intelligence findings with the Council. Colonel O activated his data systems and projected new information into the chamber's display. Delegates, our analysis of the attack evidence reveals sophisticated deception. The ships used in these attacks were not human vessels, but Keth ships disguised with human hull signatures and communication systems. You have no proof of this, Kethvash said quickly. Your claims are desperate fabrications. Actually, we do have proof, General Nam interjected. He was a compact man with scars on his hands from years of military service. Our intelligence services have been tracking unusual activity in the Outer Rim for months. We know the location of at least 12 Keth military installations, each one containing enough firepower to devastate entire star systems. The chamber erupted in alarmed discussion. Several delegates demanded immediate verification of these claims, while others called for the Keth delegation to respond to the accusations. Even if such installations exist, High Arbiter Quindos said, his crystalline form glowing brighter with agitation, they could be defensive in nature. The Keth claim they are protecting themselves from human attacks. Defensive installations do not contain invasion fleets, Admiral Lee stated firmly. Our long-range sensors have detected Keth ship concentrations numbering in the hundreds of thousands. These are not the forces of a species hiding in exile. These are the forces of a civilization preparing for galactic conquest. Kethvash's black eyes seemed to grow even darker. The humans make wild claims to distract from their own crimes. They accuse us of the very aggression they themselves have shown. If we are the aggressors, HFY said, stepping forward into the center of the chamber, then explain this. She activated her personal communicator and broadcast the threatening message she had received earlier. The words appeared in the air above the assembly in letters large enough for every delegate to read clearly. This message was sent to me directly from a Keth source. It threatens the complete destruction of Earth if humanity continues to defend itself against these false charges. Does this sound like the communication of innocent victims seeking justice? For the first time, Kethvash's composure cracked slightly. That message is clearly a human fabrication designed to... The message includes encrypted authentication codes that can be verified, Colonel O interrupted. It originated from the command ship of the Keth fleet, currently surrounding this station. Ambassador Thel Karis of the Zentari Collective spoke for the first time. Her voice carried the harmonic patterns of her hive mind species. If the human claims are true, then we are all in immediate danger. The Keth fleet outside this station could destroy Nexus Prime at any moment. Which brings us to the real purpose of this session, HFY said. This was never about justice for alleged human crimes. This was about positioning the Keth as victims while they prepare to launch the largest military campaign in galactic history. She activated new displays showing the intelligence data that Earth had gathered. Star charts marked with Keth fleet. Positions. Analysis of their ship capabilities. Estimates of their total military strength. The evidence shows that the Keth have been building their forces for 2 centuries. They have developed technology far beyond what any single species should possess. They have infiltrated Council communications and gathered intelligence on every member species. And they have been planning this moment carefully. Planning what moment? Chancellor Vex Prima asked. The moment when they could neutralize the galaxy's strongest military force and then present themselves as the injured party seeking Council protection. If humanity is expelled or destroyed, the Keth will face no significant resistance when they launch their real attack. Elder Nixtal of the peaceful Zorani delegation floated forward in his mobility sphere. You suggest that humanity is the galaxy's strongest military force? This seems like arrogance from a species that has been in space for barely a century. General Nam stepped forward. With respect, Elder, it's not arrogance if it's true. Human military doctrine has been shaped by thousands of years of warfare on our home planet. We understand conflict in ways that most peaceful species do not. Our ships are designed for battle, our tactics are proven in combat, and our soldiers are trained to fight against impossible odds. More importantly, Admiral Lee added, we're the only species that has been actively preparing for the possibility of galactic war. While other civilizations focused on peaceful development, we maintained military readiness because we understood that not all species share peaceful intentions. War singer Kef Dur of the Thraxian warrior caste spoke with the voice of someone who understood military realities. The humans speak truth. The Thraxians have observed their military capabilities. They possess tactical knowledge and fighting spirit that exceeds most council species, which is exactly why the Keth needed to eliminate us first, Haywan said. They couldn't risk facing the combined forces of the council with humanity providing military leadership and tactical expertise. Keth Vash's composure finally shattered completely. Enough of these lies, he shouted, his voice carrying undertones that made several delegates recoil. The council will choose between the word of innocent Keth survivors and the fabrications of a warlike species that has already shown its true nature. Actually, Haiwan said quietly, the council doesn't have to choose at all, because in about 10 minutes this entire discussion will become irrelevant. Every delegate in the chamber turned to look at her. Even Keth Vash seemed confused by her statement. What do you mean? Chancellor Vex Prima asked. Haywan smiled for the first time since the crisis began. I mean that while we've been talking, Admiral Lee's fleet has been moving into position around Nexus Prime. The Keth wanted to surround us with their ships to demonstrate their power, but they forgot something important about humans. What did they forget? The Chancellor asked. We don't surrender, General Nam said grimly. And we don't negotiate with terrorists. Outside the station, the first explosions lit up the darkness of space as human warships engaged the Keth fleet. The real war had finally begun. The council chamber shook as explosions lit up the space outside Nexus Prime. Through the massive transparent walls, delegates could see the battle raging between human and Keth fleets. Bright flashes of weapons fire created deadly fireworks against the black of space. Keth Vash spun toward Haywan, his black eyes blazing with fury. You have doomed this station and everyone on it. Our ships will destroy Nexus Prime rather than allow it to fall into human hands. Your ships are too busy trying to survive to threaten anyone, Admiral Lee replied calmly. He was monitoring the battle through his tactical display, watching as human vessels engaged the Keth fleet with precision and skill that surprised even him. This is madness! High Arbiter Quindos cried, his crystalline form flickering with panic. The humans have started a war in the heart of Council space! We didn't start anything, General Nam said firmly. We finished something that began 200 years ago when the Keth first tried to conquer the galaxy. Chancellor Vex Prima's voice cut through the chaos. All delegates will remain calm. Security teams are moving to protect this chamber. The station's shields are holding. But Haywan wasn't watching the battle outside. She was watching the reactions of the delegates inside the chamber. Some species were terrified by the violence. Others seemed confused by the sudden turn of events. But a few, including Quindos and Fleet Commander Zeph 9, looked less surprised than they should have been. You knew, she said suddenly, pointing at the Veltan Arbiter. You knew the Keth were coming. You've been working with them. Quindos's glow shifted to a defensive pattern. Your accusations are desperate attempts to— Colonel O, Haywan interrupted. Please share the communication intercepts you discovered. During our investigation, the intelligence officer activated new displays showing encrypted message traffic between council members and unknown sources. The messages were brief but damning. Coordination plans, meeting schedules, agreements to support Keth demands in exchange for favorable treatment after their victory. These communications show that at least 6 major council species have been secretly cooperating with the Keth, O announced. They've been providing intelligence about council military capabilities and political divisions. The chamber erupted in outraged shouts and denials. Several delegates accused the humans of fabricating evidence, while others demanded immediate investigation of the charges. "Enough!" Keth roared. "It no longer matters what any of you believe. Our fleet will complete its mission regardless of your petty political games." "Actually," came a new voice from the chamber entrance, "your fleet is losing." Everyone turned to see Lieutenant Colonel Bei Su-jin entering with a squad of human marines. She was a compact woman with intelligent eyes and the bearing of someone who had seen combat on dozens of worlds. "Colonel Bei," Admiral Lee said, "report." "The Keth fleet is in full retreat, sir. They lost 47 ships in the first engagement. Our casualties were minimal. The enemy appears to have been unprepared for human tactical doctrine." Keth stared at her in disbelief. "Impossible. Our ships are superior to human technology in every way. Your ships are individually more advanced," General Nam agreed. "But you forgot something important about warfare. Technology doesn't win battles. Training, tactics, and the will to fight win battles. And humans have been perfecting all three for thousands of years." Through the chamber windows, the delegates could see the truth of his words. The sleek Keth vessels were fast and heavily armed, but they fought like a parade formation rather than a battle fleet. Human ships, smaller, and apparently less sophisticated, moved with deadly coordination that spoke of countless hours of training and preparation. "Your species has been hiding in dark space for 2 centuries, Admiral Lee explained. "During that time, you've had no real combat experience. You've been building ships and planning strategies, but you haven't been fighting. Humans never stopped fighting. We've had conflicts with pirates, hostile species, and each other. Our military has been tested in real combat situations. Chancellor Vex Prima managed to restore some order to the chaos." "What exactly are you proposing, Ambassador?" "Kang? That the Council accept human leadership in a war against the Keth?" "I'm proposing that the Council recognize the reality of our situation," Hai Wan replied. "The Keth have spent 2 centuries preparing for this moment. They have infiltrated our governments, stolen our technology, and built invasion fleets. They were never going to be satisfied with justice for fictional crimes. They want complete conquest." Elder Nix Tao spoke from his mobility sphere. "But surely negotiation is still possible. Violence should be the last resort of civilized beings." "Elder," Haywan said gently, "the Keth made their choice when they decided to frame humanity for war crimes instead of approaching the Council openly. They could have requested readmission to galactic society. They could have asked for aid in rebuilding their civilization. Instead, they chose deception and preparation for war." War singer Kefdur's battle armor clanked as he stood. "The Thraxians support the human position. Our warrior traditions recognize the signs of a species preparing for conquest. The Keth show all these signs." "As do the Corvani," added another delegate. "Our merchant fleets have detected unusual ship movements in sectors where the Keth supposedly have settlements. These are military formations, not civilian populations." Ambassador Thel Karis of the Zentari Collective spoke with the unified voice of her hive mind. "The Zentari Collective has analyzed the evidence presented by both sides. The probability that the human analysis is correct exceeds 97%. The Keth represent an existential threat to all free species." One by one, more delegates began to speak in support of humanity's position. The evidence was simply too overwhelming to ignore, and the battle raging outside the station proved that the Keth were prepared for immediate military action. But the final moment came when Chancellor Vex Prima herself stood to address the assembly. "In my 3 centuries of service to this council," she said, "I have seen many crises and conflicts, but I have never seen a threat as carefully planned and executed as this one. The Keth have demonstrated that they view all other species as enemies to be conquered rather than neighbors to be respected." She turned to face Kethvash directly. "Your delegation claimed to seek justice, but your actions reveal preparation for war. Your ships surrounded this station not as protection, but as intimidation. Your evidence against humanity was too perfect, too convenient, and too well-timed." The Chancellor's voice grew stronger. "Most importantly, your species has violated the fundamental principle of galactic civilization, that conflicts should be resolved through discussion and compromise, not through deception and violence." Kethvash laughed bitterly. "Your principles. our weakness that we will soon eliminate. When our main fleets arrive, your pathetic council will—" His words were cut off as Colonel Bay's Marines moved to arrest him. The Keth warlord tried to resist, but human soldiers were trained for exactly this kind of situation. Motion to formally expel the Keth delegation and authorize military action against their invasion forces, Chancellor Vex Prima announced. Seconded, called War Singer Kefdur. All in favor? The vote was overwhelming. Only the species that had been secretly cooperating with the Keth abstained, and their silence was as damning as any confession. Motion carries, the Chancellor declared. General Nam, the Council hereby grants you emergency authority to coordinate our defense against the Keth invasion. Admiral Lee, she continued, you are appointed Supreme Commander of the combined Council Fleet. All member species will provide whatever military support they can manage. As the formal votes were recorded, Haywan looked out at the space around Nexus Prime. The Keth ships were indeed retreating, their perfect formation broken by human tactics they hadn't expected. But she knew this was only the beginning. Somewhere, in the dark spaces between stars, massive Keth fleets were already moving toward Council space. The real war would be fought in the coming months and years. Dr. Choi's voice came through her communicator. Ambassador, we're receiving surrender requests from the Keth ships that can't escape. What should we tell them? Haywan thought for a moment about everything that had led to this point. The deception, the threats, the attempt to frame humanity for crimes they didn't commit. Tell them they can surrender unconditionally and face trial for war crimes, she said. Or they can continue fighting and face the consequences. But either way, the galaxy now knows the truth about both our species. She looked around the council chamber, where delegates were already beginning to coordinate military preparations. Human officers were working with alien commanders to plan joint operations. Species that had never trusted each other were finding common ground in the face of a shared threat. Admiral, she said to Lee, I think the galaxy is about to learn something important about humanity. What's that? We don't just fight to win. We fight to protect those who can't protect themselves. She paused, watching as more species volunteered ships and resources for the coming war. And apparently that's exactly the kind of allies the galaxy needs. In the end, the Keth had been right about one thing. It was time for war. But they had made a critical error in their calculations.